They dumped his life on the airport floor, a folded flag, his daughter's letters, his uniform. Fake, the agent sneered. They didn't know the man they were humiliating was a legendary Army Ranger on his final flight home. The low hum of the airport terminal was a strange symphony to Master Sergeant Marcus Thorne. For 25 years, the dominant sounds of his life had been the thrum of helicopter blades, the crackle of radio static, and the profound, heart-stopping silence of a desert night. Now, the squeal of luggage wheels and the garbled announcements of flight departures felt alien, like a language he had to relearn. At 45, Marcus was on his final journey in uniform, a journey that would end not in another dusty outpost, but at home. For good. His Army combat uniform was crisp, the Ranger tab on his shoulder a mark of quiet distinction. His face was a roadmap of his service, etched with the fine lines of desert sun and sleepless nights, but his eyes, a deep, steady brown, held a calm that could soothe a nervous private or freeze an enemy in his tracks. He walked with an economy of motion, his duffel bag slung over a shoulder that had carried the weight of his country's expectations through deployments in places most people couldn't find on a map. He wasn't thinking of the past. He was thinking of the future. Of teaching his daughter, Maya, how to drive. Of finally fixing the leaky faucet his wife, Sarah, had been mentioning in her letters for the last 6 months. Of sleeping in a bed that didn't have sand in it. The thought brought a rare, small smile to his lips. He was Master Sergeant Thorne, a decorated soldier, a leader of men. But in a few short hours, he would just be Marcus. A husband. A father. A civilian. As he moved through the bustling concourse, he was just another face in the crowd, another soldier heading home. No one knew this was his last time, the final chapter in a long and storied career. He carried himself with an unassuming grace, unaware that his final test as a soldier would not take place on a battlefield, but here, on the polished linoleum floors of Gate B12. He was near the security checkpoint leading to the domestic departure gates when two figures stepped into his path. They were TSA agents, their blue uniforms stretched taut over bulky frames. The taller one, whose name tag read, "Done," had a smug, dismissive look on his face. The shorter, stockier one, Cole, wore an expression of bored belligerence. "Sir, we're going to need you to step aside for a random secondary screening," Dunn said, his voice flat, devoid of any respect. The word random felt like a lie the moment it left his lips. Marcus, a man trained to read intent in the subtlest of gestures, knew this was anything but random. He saw the way their eyes swept over him, cataloging his skin color before they even registered his uniform. He simply nodded. Understood. He followed them to a sterile, glass-walled area off to the side, placing his duffel bag on the metal table. He was a professional. This was a process. He would follow it. Returning from a trip? Cole asked, his tone laced with a sneering insinuation, as if he already knew the answer was a lie. Returning from deployment, Marcus corrected him calmly. Dunn circled the table, his eyes narrowed. "We've had reports of individuals impersonating military personnel to gain travel benefits or to smuggle illicit goods," he said, the accusation hanging heavy and poisonous in the air. "You fit a certain description." Marcus felt a cold knot tighten in his gut, but his expression remained impassive. He had faced down men with RPGs. He would not be rattled by petty tyrants with badges. "I can assure you, my service is legitimate. My ID and my orders are in my front pocket." He made a slow, deliberate move to reach for them, but Dunn held up a hand. "We'll get to that. First, let's see what's in the bag. We need to verify the contents." The demand was irregular, a clear deviation from standard procedure for a soldier in uniform, but Marcus recognized the game. This was about power. It was about humiliation. He gave another tight nod, his jaw clenching for a fraction of a second. "Go ahead." The agents didn't search the bag. They desecrated it. Cole unzipped the duffel and, with a single, contemptuous motion, appended it, dumping its entire contents onto the cold, dirty floor of the terminal. It was an act of profound disrespect, designed to scatter and to shame. The contents of a soldier's life spilled out in a messy, intimate heap. His neatly folded dress uniform, the one he planned to wear for his retirement ceremony, tumbled out, its polished metals clinking softly against the tile. A stack of letters from his wife and daughter, tied together with a faded ribbon, slid across the floor. A crude, crayon drawing from Maya of a stick figure in a helmet labeled Daddy landed near Dunn's boot. His official, sealed retirement orders from the Department of the Army fluttered out, a testament to 25 years of service. And then, something else. A small, triangular wooden case containing a folded American flag. It wasn't his. It was the flag that had draped the casket of his best friend, a man who had died in his arms in the Karengal Valley. Marcus carried it with him on every deployment, a sacred promise to a fallen brother. The two agents stared at the scattered effects of a life of service with blank, unimpressed eyes. Dunn nudged the folded flag with the toe of his shoe, a gesture of such profound ignorance it took Marcus's breath away. "Look at all this," Dunn chuckled to his partner, a cruel, mocking sound that cut through the terminal's ambient noise. "Got all the props. The letters, the flag, it's a good story, I'll give you that." Cole picked up the drawing from Maya. He held it up, smirking. "Cute." He let it flutter back to the floor. The cold knot in Marcus's gut turned into a blazing fire. This wasn't about security. This wasn't about procedure. This was a violation. They weren't just searching his bag, they were defiling his life, his sacrifice, his honor. He looked at the flag on the floor, the symbol he had pledged his life to, being treated like trash. For the first time on his long journey home, Master Sergeant Marcus Thorne felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. Marcus's training was a cage of iron, holding back the beast of his anger. His voice, when he spoke, was dangerously quiet, a low rumble that vibrated with contained fury. He looked directly at Dunn, his eyes like chips of obsidian. "Pick it up." Dunn, taken aback by the sudden shift in tone, actually took a half-step back. But his arrogance quickly reasserted itself. "What did you just say to me?" "The flag," Marcus clarified, his voice still low, but now with a sharp, commanding edge that had made hardened soldiers snap to attention. "And the letters. Pick them up. Now." This was a direct challenge, and in the small, pathetic kingdom of Dunn and Cole's authority, challenges were not tolerated. They saw it as aggression, the final proof they needed. "That's it," Cole snapped, moving forward. "You're done. You're being detained for threatening a federal officer." "I gave no threat," Marcus stated, standing his ground. "Resisting a search, then." "It's all the same," Dunn added, eager to escalate. He shoved Marcus hard in the chest. The shove was clumsy but powerful, knocking Marcus off balance. He stumbled backward, his arms flailing for a moment before he caught himself. The sight of a uniformed soldier being physically assaulted sent a ripple of gasps through the growing crowd of onlookers. Phones were out, dozens of them, all pointed at the unfolding drama. Dunn and Cole moved in, flanking him. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Marcus didn't comply. He stood tall, his gaze fixed on the desecrated flag still lying on the floor. It was a silent, powerful act of defiance. Enraged by his refusal to be cowed, Dunn grabbed him and spun him around, slamming him face first into the cold, hard wall of the terminal. The impact sent a jolt of pain through his shoulder. They yanked his arms behind his back, the pressure agonizing, and secured his wrists with a pair of rigid plastic zip ties, pulling them cruelly tight. A child in the crowd began to cry, her small voice cutting through the tense silence. "Mommy," she wailed, "why are they hurting that soldier?" The question hung in the air, a simple, damning indictment of the entire scene. With Marcus restrained against the wall, Dunn and Cole felt a surge of victory. They had subdued the threat, asserted their dominance. They turned to face the crowd, their expressions a mixture of triumph and warning, daring anyone else to challenge them. The terminal was unnaturally quiet, the only sounds being the child sobbing and the faint, almost imperceptible clicking of dozens of cell phone cameras. Then, a new sound cut through the tension. It was a voice. Not loud, but it carried an authority that instantly commanded the attention of everyone within earshot. Stand down. The two words were clipped, precise, and utterly absolute. It wasn't a request, it was a command from a higher echelon, spoken in a tone that expected and would receive immediate compliance. The crowd instinctively parted. Striding through the path they created was a tall, imposing black man in a perfectly tailored dark suit. His walk was purposeful, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. An ID badge clipped to his jacket identified him, Robert Kane, Director of Airport Security. Kane was a retired Air Force colonel, a man who had commanded entire airbases. He knew leadership, and he knew protocol. And as his eyes took in the scene, the decorated soldier in zip ties, the spilled contents of the duffel bag, the American flag on the floor, and the two preening TSA agents, he understood everything in a single, sickening instant. He didn't stop to ask questions. He didn't look at the crowd. He walked directly toward his two subordinates, his presence sucking all the air out of the space around them. Dunn and Cole, who had been puffing out their chests moments before, seemed to shrink, their smug expressions dissolving into confusion and dawning apprehension. Kane stopped directly in front of them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His eyes, burning with a righteous fire, were enough. He pointed a single, steady finger at Marcus's cuffed hands. "I said, stand down," Director Kane repeated, his voice now a low, dangerous growl. "Release him. That is a direct order." The authority in Director Kane's voice was so absolute that Dunn and Cole reacted instinctively, like privates being dressed down by a drill sergeant. Cole fumbled for a pair of clippers and snipped the zip ties from Marcus's wrists, his hands trembling slightly. Marcus rubbed his raw, chafed skin but said nothing. He simply pushed himself off the wall and stood at a position that was not quite attention, but close, a sign of respect for the authority Kane represented. Kane's gaze remained locked on his two agents. "My office receives an alert anytime the words, military impersonator, are used in an incident report," he said, his voice like ice. "I saw your report come through. Then I saw the live security feed." He gestured vaguely at the cameras on the ceiling. "Tell me, Officer Dunn, what part of your training taught you to identify a hostile threat by throwing a man's life on the floor?" Dunn's face went pale. "Sir, he was non-compliant. He fit the description." "The description of what?" Kane shot back, his voice sharp as broken glass. "A black man? A soldier? Or a black man in a soldier's uniform, which in your mind somehow equals a threat?" He took a step closer. "I just watched you assault a man who has served this country for 25 years. I watched you desecrate a memorial flag. And I watched you do it with a smile on your face." He turned to Cole. "And you? You stood by and let it happen. You participated. You are just as culpable." Kane then knelt, not with any sense of drama, but with a reverence that shamed every action the two agents had taken. He carefully picked up the folded flag from the floor, his movements precise and respectful. He brushed off a speck of dust, his expression grim. He then picked up Maya's drawing and held it for a moment before placing it carefully on top of the duffel bag. He stood up, the folded flag held properly in his hands. He looked at Dunn and Cole, and they visibly flinched, finally understanding the depth of the chasm they had just thrown themselves into. The reckoning was here, and it was swift, public, and merciless. The crowd was a silent jury, their phones the official record. Director Kane knew this. He knew that justice, in this case, needed to be as public as the humiliation had been. There would be no quiet meeting in a back room, no hushed suspension. There would be a lesson. He handed the folded flag to Marcus. "Master Sergeant Thorne," he said, his voice ringing with formal respect, I apologize on behalf of this entire airport for the disgrace you have been forced to endure." The use of Marcus's rank was a deliberate, pointed message to everyone present. Then, he turned back to Dunn and Cole. His voice dropped, but it carried to every corner of the now silent terminal. "The uniform you wear is a symbol of trust. The badge you carry is a symbol of authority, granted to you by the people you are sworn to protect. You have betrayed that trust. You have abused that authority. And you have dishonored the uniform." He held out his hand. "Your badges. Now." The two men stared at him, their faces a mixture of disbelief and panic. This wasn't happening. A public dressing down, maybe. A suspension, probably. But this? This was professional execution. "Sir, please," Dunn began, his voice a pathetic whine. "Now." Kane's command cracked like a whip. Shaking, fumbling with the clips on their shirts, the two men removed their TSA badges. Their hands trembled as they placed them into Director Kane's outstretched palm. He closed his hand over them, a look of profound disgust on his face. "You have failed at your most basic duty," Kane stated, his voice cold and final. "You are a disgrace to this agency and a liability to the safety of this airport. As of this moment, you are both terminated, effective immediately. Airport police will escort you from the premises. You are not to set foot in this terminal again." A wave of audible gasps and murmurs swept through the onlookers. This was justice they could see, immediate and unequivocal. The two former agents stood there, stripped of their authority, utterly broken in front of the very public they had lorded it over just minutes before. As airport police officers arrived to lead the disgraced Dunn and Cole away, a strange and beautiful thing happened. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't applaud. A respectful silence fell over the terminal. Marcus knelt to gather the scattered pieces of his life. Before he could pick up more than one of his daughter's letters, another man knelt beside him. He was older, white, wearing a faded baseball cap with a Marine Corps insignia. Without a word, he began to help, carefully stacking the letters. Then another person joined, a young woman in an Air Force sweatshirt. She gently picked up Marcus's formal dress uniform, shaking out the wrinkles and folding it with care. Soon, a small group of strangers, veterans and civilians alike, were quietly, respectfully helping him put his life back in his bag. The old Marine saw the half-unfolded memorial flag. He and Marcus caught each other's eye, a moment of instant, unspoken understanding passing between them. Together, they began to refold it, their hands moving in the crisp, familiar, 13-fold ceremony that every service member knows by heart. Each fold was a tribute, a prayer, a moment of silent communion. The gate agent for Marcus's flight, who had been watching from her podium, picked up her microphone. Her voice, thick with emotion, echoed through the gate area. "Attention passengers for Flight 428 to Atlanta. We will be observing a 15-minute boarding delay, to honor the dignity of a returning American hero." The response was a wave of quiet, heartfelt applause. It wasn't loud or boisterous, it was a soft, rolling thunder of pure, unadulterated respect. Director Kane personally walked Master Sergeant Thorne to his gate, carrying his duffel bag for him. The crowd parted for them, their expressions a mixture of awe and gratitude. "Thorne," Kane said, his voice low and earnest as they reached the jet bridge. "What happened today, it exposed a rot. I give you my word, I will cut it out. This will not happen again on my watch." Marcus stopped and looked at Kane. Then he looked out at the faces in the crowd, the old Marine, the young airman, the child who had cried for him. He saw the reflection of his own country, complicated and flawed, but still capable of profound decency. "Director," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "Don't just promise me. Promise them." He gestured to the crowd. "Make sure this doesn't happen to the next soldier who looks like me." Kane met his gaze and gave a single, solemn nod. "You have my word." Marcus smiled, a genuine, tired smile. He took his bag, offered a final nod of thanks, and walked down the jet bridge, not broken, but seen. He was finally, truly, on his way home. Respect isn't given, it's earned. But sometimes, it must be demanded. Have you ever witnessed an act of profound respect for a stranger? Share that story in the comments, and comment respect to honor all those who serve with dignity. Subscribe, and let's ensure every story of courage gets the audience it deserves.